This one's called Double Gaze. Shout out to Mrs. Weeder for naming it. And here it goes. I first saw her that afternoon entering the house's heavy oaken door, thanking a maid politely as she entered and placing her own grandiose fur coat on the wooden hat stand. I'd seen this woman before at various functions hosted by my soon-to-be ex-employers, though I had never once deemed it worthwhile to commit her name to memory. Furthermore, its utterance soon became such a taboo among the household thereafter, I was never afforded an opportunity of hearing it. I think sometimes that perhaps if I had learned who she was, my curiosity in her could somehow be resolved. But from the moment she arrived inexplicably late to that large afternoon gathering already well underway, she became an enigma who has captivated me ever since. I noticed immediately at her entrance on this occasion the apprehensive grace with which she now moved, and noted I had never before seen anything quite like it. I was straight away fascinated by this woman, as well as by the marked ambivalence her entrance soon prompted on the generic faces of the other party guests. It was not unusual at such an event for disdain to dominate the bulk of collective interaction, but the marked air of confusion as to how this woman should be treated was entirely unprecedented among this socially regimented flock of sheep. A partial hush fell gradually across the party as the woman made her way through the house towards her hosts, the young Mr. and Mrs. Harcourt. "Good afternoon, Ross, Blair. I'm sorry to be so late, but may I say the house looks lovely and thank you very much for your invitation." Though she greeted the couple as one may have expected, dripping with false cordiality, during the entirety of my time spent under their employ, I had never seen this couple so close to being lost for words. The Harcourts were considered by many, perhaps most of all themselves, to be an incontrovertible epitome of polite society, although this bitterly ironic denotation did them little of the justice they truly deserved. A purportedly hedonistic lifestyle which their forebears had pursued for decades now drove them to focus with almost comical intent upon a distinctive culture of inane triviality, leaving little time outside the conduction of various indistinguishable business ventures and facile social gatherings. It seemed to me that superficiality pervaded their lifestyle so absolutely that even self-gratification and indulgence became a daily household chore. And moreover, the only such chore, not blindly and habitually just delegated to the extensive network of hired help of which I now found myself a part. Oh no need to apologise. Welcome. I'm not sure any of us expected you to come considering your recent circumstances. It's very brave of you and certainly a pleasant surprise. I hope you enjoy yourself. Blair Harcourt responded offhandedly after a moment's pause and proceeded with her husband to move away and take refuge in another group of partygoers without another word. Insipid conversation and the relentless sipping of champagne continued after this initial uneasiness had been dealt with, while the woman was left standing alone. With a dignified poise, she then moved through the parlour to recline on a luxurious leather armchair before accepting a refreshment from the waiting maid. Clutching a glass of crystal, she gazed with a humbled vacancy into the distance as she sipped upon effervescent liquid, while other guests stared at her remarkably unsubtly from the corners of their eye. It soon dawned on me the irony that I myself was also gawking in much the same manner. I looked upon her that day with a kind of vacillating solicitude which I had never before or would again find myself harbouring. Even though I had come across her before, she appeared different now, and the silent disdain I generally reserve for those recurrently in the company of my soon-to-be ex-employers seemed somehow markedly fitting. By committing the unforgivable sin of being debased and humiliated, she had foolishly managed to pervade the overwhelming vacuity of their own shared privilege, and in doing so was afforded the ritual dose of pious contempt her associates took such ironic pleasure in bestowing. It was almost a religious transformation. She had been involuntarily martyrized and served now, fleetingly, a truly sacred purpose to this exclusive sect of remarkably dissatisfied people. It was admittedly somewhat unusual that they would select such an unwilling sacrifice from their own ranks, as opposed to a being deemed less worthy. But it could be considered almost bitterly heartening proof that their collective malice did at least not always discriminate. I soon found myself in a state of near hypnosis as these thoughts flowed through my mind, glittering as they did like champagne poured from a bottle, until it happened that a drunken, red-faced diplomat managed to jolt me abruptly back to reality. This man, clothed in an ill-fitting, decorate military uniform, danced across the room drunkenly past the woman as she sat, breaking both our trances as he knocked a nearby sculpture, sending a chrome stallion crashing into the armchair with a clang. All heads turned, and the clearly embarrassed ambassador quickly turned to the woman, yelling vehemently, "You bitch, you tripped me. I don't even know how you can show your face here after what your husband has done. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you would lash out at an honest man like me so disgustingly." I found this choice of words interesting. It seemed to me that given the flagrantly illicit behaviour of those present in the room, the only thing any one of them could accuse her husband of was the act of being caught, though the hypocrisy inherent in their condemnation seemed to be lost on all except myself. The woman took a moment to overcome her incredulity at such a vagrantly untrue accusation, but this was soon repressed, and she rose to her feet pridefully, retorting with refined poise, "How can you possibly call me disgusting? Or you vapid hypocrite standing around drinking and thinking you're invincible. I cannot believe I ever considered you any of you my friends. This could have happened to any one of you, and you're each as disgusting as I am." With those words, she flung the remaining contents of her glass at the ambassador's pompous face and made her exit, leaving the entire congregation in stunned silence. Watching as this still immaculately addressed young woman then proceeded to remove her high-heeled shoes and clutch them by the straps, she then slid a diamond ring from her glinting finger with a palpable air of resoluteness. In the same motion, without any measure of hesitation, I observed her discard the thing and expectorate after it, looking downwards from the road she now stood upon with bare feet. I never encountered her again after that day, and my employment with the Harcourt family was volitionally terminated soon after, but forever imprinted on my mind will remain the very last I ever saw of this remarkable oddity, as I looked past the meticulously maintained gardens through a small larder window. From my vantage point, I could see as she stormed unescorted through the lavishly adorned front gates of that lonely estate, and observed her look back at the manor for just a moment after, as if contacting my own eyes. I noted then how strange a voyeur I might have seemed had she known of my preoccupation at the time. I cannot attest still as to her exact comportment as she finally did turn her back on the manor and my own watchful gaze, but as I picture her again in my mind walking alone that afternoon, out far away from that afflicted edifice carrying her shoes, I see a satisfaction and determination in her that to this day I have never since found more contentment in.